The Stonemason by Cormac McCarthy, one of the last works by McCarthy which I had yet to read. In fact, after reading this, I think now that the only thing by him that I have not read, aside from one or two or so odd short stories, I think McCarthy wrote a couple of short stories like in the late 1950s, which I'm not sure if they have ever been reprinted anywhere. So I may not be able to read those. But aside from those, I think the only thing by him that I have not read now is his teleplay, The Gardener's Son. But anyway, The Stonemason is a play, one of, I believe, two plays which McCarthy wrote, the other being The Sunset Limited. And The Stonemason is centered around a black family surnamed Telfair living in Louisville, Kentucky in the early 1970s and contending with kind of an assortment of domestic problems, from some financial distress to the doings of a wayward child. But it also centers around the craft of stonemasonry, which is kind of the family craft of the Telfairs. So that's kind of all I can really say as regards the plot, because it doesn't really have much in the way of a plot in the typical sense of like B follows A, C follows B, etc. It's kind of loose, but it's a domestic drama about a black family living in Louisville, Kentucky, as I said, in the early 1970s, and their heritage is one of stonemasonry, and they contend with various issues, and that's kind of it. Now, I want to say that this is, in some respects, a pretty unconventional play. For one, it requires a character to be portrayed on stage by two different actors at the same time, which is pretty anomalous, I would think, for theater. But beyond that, I would like to just read the opening, like, stage direction that inaugurates the book, because it is truly something else. So this is Act 1, Scene 1, and the setting and stage directions read as follows. An old Victorian house in the black section of Louisville, Kentucky in February of 1971. The inhabitants are four generations of a black family named Telfair. It is midnight. At curtain rise, there is a single light burning stage right where Ben Telfair sits at a small table. He is a 32-year-old black stonemason. Behind him and to the right is a high basement window and the soft blue light from a street lamp. Outside in this light, a softly falling snow. At far stage left is a podium or lectern at which Ben will speak his monologues throughout the play. It is important to note that the Ben we see on stage during the monologues is a double, and to note that this double does not speak, but is only a figure designed to complete the scene. The purpose, as we shall see, is to give distance to the events and to place them in a completed past. The onstage double should nevertheless be as close to Ben in appearance as is practicable, and the two should at all times be dressed identically. What must be kept in mind is that the performance consists of two separate presentations. One is the stage drama. The other is the monologue, or chautauqua, which Ben delivers from the podium. And while it is true that Ben at his podium is at times speaking for or through his silent double on stage, it is nevertheless a crucial feature of the play that there be no suggestion of communication between these worlds. In this sense, it would not even be incorrect to assume that Ben is unaware of the stage drama. Above all, we must resist the temptation to see the drama as something being presented by the speaker at his lectern, for to do so is to defraud the drama of its right autonomy. One could say that the play is an artifact of history to which the audience is made privy, yet if the speaker at his podium apostrophizes the figures in that history, it is only as they reside in his memory. It is this which dictates the use of the podium. It locates Ben in a separate space and isolates that space from the world of the drama on stage. The speaker has an agenda which centers upon his own exoneration, his own salvation. The events which unfold upon the stage will not at all times support him. The audience may perhaps be also a jury. And now we can begin. As the mathematician Gauss said to his contemporaries, go forward and faith will come to you. The podium is lit. Ben comes forward to take his place there. As he begins to speak, his double seated at the table on stage begins to write. So that is the opening scene setting / stage direction of the play, and what a doozy that is, as is hopefully made manifest in my reading of that. This is, like I said, a pretty unconventional play with some pretty odd tricks going on stage. It's kind of weird. However, it is also very good. Ben Telfair, the character described there, is the main character. And I guess the second most prominent character would be his grandfather, who is known throughout the play mostly as Papa. And Papa is the old stonemason who is basically this wizened old sage, which Ben really cleaves to because he sees in his grandfather a great deal of wisdom, and he wants to absorb as much of that as possible. Now, I should note here that the way that stonemasonry is portrayed in this play is as a very spiritual craft. And this also has kind of an autobiographical element to it because Cormac McCarthy himself was no stranger to the craft of stonemasonry. I believe, in fact, that one of the houses that he lived in, I think it was in New Mexico, he actually built stone by stone, brick by brick, because he apparently is or was an at least proficient mason. And as I said, the way that stonemasonry is portrayed in this book is in a very deeply spiritual light. And of course, that's not unwarranted because masonry historically has a kind of very, one is almost tempted to say, esoteric history to it. Obviously, we have the Freemasons, that kind of secret society, if you will, which is kind of the perennial source of conspiracy theories, but which was originally a society of Masons. And of course, the Freemason society kind of draws kind of its historical roots from, I believe, the Temple of Solomon with the two pillars of, what is it, Joachim and Boaz, I think. There's kind of this like mystical tradition to stonemasonry. If you like really, dig into it, you can find some kind of mystical elements to the history of the craft. And Cormac McCarthy was no stranger to that, and he makes great use of that in this play, because a lot of this play consists of monologuing about stonemasonry and the kind of esoteric spiritual qualities of that. Another reason why this is perhaps not conventional drama is because it doesn't really have so much of a conventionally structured plot. And that's something that you might notice about Cormac McCarthy's non-novelistic works, is that they're kind of just playing by their own rules. The Sunset Limited, I suppose, is the most conventional of the non-novelistic works that he wrote, but his screenplays, such as The Counselor. Oh, that's another one. I have not read The Counselor. I want to amend what I said at the beginning. I have not read the screenplay for The Counselor, although I have seen the film. It was all right, but also highly unconventional because it doesn't have a conventionally structured plot, and so much of it just consists of arcane dialogue delivered by characters who really don't have that much right to be speaking in such a fashion. But that screenplay is unconventional. If you've ever read the unpublished screenplay Whales and Men, that is like the like antithesis of conventional film writing. Very strange, just blocks of dialogue, and it's just not anything approaching like a typical movie. And this is right in that vein. This is a play that is not a normal play. But although I think I do understand why he wrote this as a play, because uh, so much of it is just literal monologuing, and you can kind of make a you can make room for that on the stage, I suppose. Theater has a rich history of monologuing, like, in Shakespeare and stuff. So I kind of get why he wrote this as he did, but still, it's kind of weird, honestly. But as I said, it is quite good, actually. And that's odd because this is one of McCarthy's most underrated and least discussed works. Like, you never hear the Stonemason brought up really in conversation when discussing his bibliography. It's a very under the radar kind of work, but it's a solid work. It's really good. The characters are great. Ben Telfair is a really great and a very relatable and in many ways admirable character. And Papa, the kind of wizened sage, the old stonemason, is also a very memorable character. And this family really does come to life over the course of the acts which comprise this play. It is rich in character, and it's also rich, as per usual with McCarthy's works, in that, again, kind of arcane, mystical stuff, if you will, the kind of commentary and philosophizing which we love about McCarthy. Even if it at times kind of feels out of place, it nonetheless is interesting, and it gives this play a much greater depth, honestly. And even though it doesn't have a kind of plot in the traditional sense, it's still interesting, and it doesn't overstay its welcome, and it feels pretty well executed overall. So honestly, I think that the Stonemason is really a pretty great work, and it's kind of a shame that it isn't talked about as much as it is. So to rate the Stonemason by Cormac McCarthy, I'm gonna give this an A. I'm gonna give this an A. It's not maybe the greatest thing that he ever wrote, but it is unique in one respect, and that would have to be the tonality of it, because Cormac McCarthy's body of work is largely characterized by bleak, hellish, melancholic tones, which are not really the cheeriest stuff that you'll ever read. And while I would never say that the Stonemason is like cheery or joyous in tone, it is kind of sad and somber. It nonetheless manages to reach something approaching uplifting, honestly. Like, the overall message of this about the dignity of labor, and just, doing what one can to kind of, keep the world held together as much as one can with one's own hands and stuff, and just doing the best that one can. Like I say, it almost approaches something uplifting, and I can't believe I'm saying that, because that is so against the grain for a Cormac McCarthy work. But it's not bleak or hellish. It is kind of sad at times and a little somber, but ultimately I think the message that this has to convey is a positive one, actually. So there's that, if nothing else. So yeah, I'm gonna give the Stonemason an A. I think it's a crackerjack work that is unfortunately not really talked about enough, I would say. But anyway, The Stonemason by Cormac McCarthy. Have you read The Stonemason, or have you seen it performed? I highly doubt that anyone out there has, because I kind of get the impression that this is not something that is performed all that often. But let me know down in the comments if you have read, or on the off chance that you ever have seen this performed, what you thought about the play, whether you have agreed or disagreed with anything I've said about it here today. And if you haven't read the Stonemason, I would definitely recommend this, especially for like the Cormac McCarthy completionists out there. But also, it's just in its own right a really solid work, honestly, and one that, again, I think should perhaps be talked about a little bit more than it is. So I definitely could recommend this. And as always, if you have enjoyed anything you've seen or heard here today, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, peace.